Hello everyone, and welcome back to the garage with Bonesaw. Today we'll be looking at the German Tier 4 tank destroyer, the Hetzer. Well, technically it's not the Hetzer. More correctly, this tank should be called the Jagdpanzer 38T. Essentially it was a tank destroyer built on the Panzer 38T chassis, hence the name, and it was never actually called the Hetzer officially. What actually happened was the fact that there was a similar design being developed at the same time, the E10, which was given the official designation of Hetzer. Now, apparently Skoda, the guys who built this, mixed up the documents at one point, and so they were reporting to the higher-ups saying, oh yes, the Hetzer's coming along, at which point Hitler and Guderian were both like, Hetzer, we haven't heard of this tank, we didn't authorize any tank called Hetzer. But, you know, the name, with historians at least, and model makers, the name kind of stuck, even though the Germans never called this tank the Hetzer, they called it the Jagdpanzer 38T. Overall, this tank is kind of just like it was in real life. Based on the Panzer 38T chassis, it's very reliable, and it's very good at ambush operations. It has a 60mm sloped frontal armour, which comes close to about 120mm of armour. Very few weak points on the front. As you can see, the only real weak points are that very small driver's vision port, the lower plate, and if they can get a shot at the side of the gun mantlet. But it's very hard to get an accurate shot at the side of the gun mantlet. It's a very low profile tank, very good camouflage rating, great for hiding in bushes. It's even better when you upgrade it with a camouflage net. The main weakness of this tank, however, is its view range. It only has 260 meters of view range, which isn't very long for a tank destroyer. It means you generally have to get quite close to the enemy. It's the same reason why I've mounted binocular telescopes on my Hetzer. It'll increase the view range up to close to about 300, which certainly helps. The side and rear armour isn't very good. At the side it's about 20mm, at the rear it's 8. Very vulnerable to side attacks. Thankfully, however, the Hetzer does turn well. It has a 30-degree traverse speed, but it's pretty quick. It has a speed limit of listed as 42, but it's closer to about 30, and it's pretty light. It doesn't have much health, though. That's generally the trend with tank destroyers. They don't have much health. So a solid hit from an artillery piece will take you out. The key to playing this tank is either be stealthy or be facing them front on. In terms of guns, because that's really what's all important with a tank destroyer, you have three choices with the Hetzer. It comes stock with a 75mm L43, and it's not great. It has 103mm of penetration, 110 damage. That's okay, but it's not amazing. It's the same stock gun that the Panzer 3-on-4 comes with. It's the first 75mm that the Panzer 4 gets. It's alright, but you want to get the next one, the Pak 39 L48. The L48 is good. It's the gun from the Panzer 4. It's the top gun on the Panzer 4 and the Panzer 3-on-4 essentially. It just doesn't have quite as much penetration because when they buffed the L48 on the tanks, they didn't buff it on the tank destroyers. But it's still quite good for Tier 4. It has 110mm of penetration, which is enough to penetrate a KV nominally. The KV does have some rather silly armor. You can penetrate the French B1 tank. You can penetrate most tanks at your tier. You can penetrate with this 110mm. That's fine, and above your tier as well, because you are only Tier 4. You will see up to Tier 6 fights. And your final choice is the 105mm Stu 42 L28. This is also on the Panzer 4. This is the 105 derp gun on the Panzer 4. And you do see some use of it on the Hetzer. You do see people using it. I, however, will not recommend this gun. And a lot of people might be saying, well, why not? Why not? It's a derp gun. You want a derp gun. Derp guns are great. They can one-shot things. Well, yes and no. The derp gun's good on the Panzer 4 because you can kind of maneuver with it and kind of do drive-bys, hide behind cover and show up out of nowhere to flank someone. On the Hetzer, your movement's a lot more restricted, and you kind of want to be sniping with this a bit more, and the 105's not particularly good for that. The other problem is that as of 8.6, accuracy on most guns was buffed, but the 105mm guns were nerfed. Their splash damage, if they don't penetrate, was lowered, and it only has 53mm of penetration with HE rounds, which isn't very much. And the heat rounds were nerfed as well, so it only has 104mm with a heat round, and the damage has been reduced on the heat rounds, and many other things were done to them. So the Hetzer with the Steel 42 is viable, but in my opinion, the L48 is the better choice, especially because it was buffed as well with the accuracy, global accuracy buff. So it's now much more consistent, and it really allows you to put some consistent damage on enemy tanks from a concealed position. Overall, the Hetzer excels at urban fighting, ambush operations, hiding in bushes, and just really attacking those unaware opponents. It can be very resistant. I've gotten numerous steel walls in this tank. You just got to make sure to cover up this lower plate. It's really the biggest weakness on your tank. There is also a slight bias to the right because this gun is mounted on the right side of the tank. It can swing further to the right than the left, so you can use that to engage around corners whilst keeping yourself angled and safe. And the 615 meter signal range on this tank will keep you in contact with most of the allies on your team. So overall, the Hetzer, very, very effective tank destroyer, very stealthy, and it's a great starting place to learn the tricks of the trade for tank destroyers about hiding and picking your targets, especially because it has that durability with that sloped frontal hull. Means that newer tank destroyer players really can learn the ropes in a much more resilient and forgiving environment than some of the other tank destroyers available. The Hetzer is, in my opinion, easily the best vehicle at Tier 4. Incredibly effective, and one of my favourite tanks in the game. So here we are on Abbey with the Jagdpanzer 38T Hetzer German tank destroyer. So setting up here with my binoculars and camouflage net in order to cover the central road. This is a pretty good map for the Hetzer. There's a lot of bushes to hide in, good urban area in the central town if you want to get into some close quarters fighting. So overall, a good map for the Hetzer. Unfortunately, my team isn't spreading out all that well. We have far too many heading for the central town. Both of our heavies are going the left flank, so I'm pinging the right flank just to bring it to the attention of the rest of the team. Unfortunately, no one's really paying attention, so I'm taking matters into my own hands. Just throwing it up in chat to see if anyone is willing to come over to the east road as well, but unfortunately everyone's content to sit in the center of the map. And yes, Churchill 3, I did not expect you to go to the east road. I expected some of these mediums in the town to go, but anyway. So, moving on down. We're going to have to take it slow and steady here. Use the Hetzer's excellent capacity as an ambush vehicle, because we're on our own and more than likely we'll be facing at least one heavy tank with backup. At best, I'm hoping for a delaying action. However, things do turn out somewhat differently. There is a good amount of cover down on this road, so a Hetzer can be a decent enough roadblock if set up correctly. You just have to make sure you don't get overwhelmed. So I'm hugging the sides of the valley here so that any enemies set up across the pond there won't have any decent shots at me from their concealed positions. I'm trying to just give as little of my lower glasses to the enemy, just have the mantlet and part of my frontal slope showing. So I've got a tank destroyer up there, but I have no shot on him. He's already been destroyed. So far we're 3 for 4, now tied 4 for 4, which isn't actually going all that well. Our left flank push is 2 heavy tanks with no support, which isn't good. Our centre town's mucking around a bit. And I'm about to encounter some enemies. Waiting here patiently, and that tree is about to fall over and it's going to be a KV-1. The east road is one of the more common routes for heavy tanks, so you should always park at least one durable vehicle over here. And 1 is the bare minimum. Alright, so there's the tree gone. Going into the scope. KV1. Unfortunately that bounces. I honestly hate fighting KV1s. Alright, T28, he misses his shot. So I'll plug one to the side of the KV and bounce his shot. Now it's all about just digging myself into the corner here. So I hide in here and angle myself, they can't really hit me. So that was a shot to my lower plate from the T28. I've managed to bounce all the other rounds so far. Just destroying this Su-76. Putting a crit on the KV and retreating slightly to give them less shot at my lower plate. Juking in and out. Now here I didn't expect to survive. It was more a case of just delaying the enemy so we could make it to the cap. But fortunately, for the enemy at least, they weren't very good at their job. So I've taken out the T-28. Move around and kill the Su-76. Now it's just me and a KV. Now, the KV will bounce a number of my shots up here, because the KV is one of the tanks that I hate fighting. Their armor is annoyingly resistant, especially considering how they were in real life. Now he's just put one through my lower plate. Got to really be careful. So he puts another shot into me, I will die. So now it's a matter of just hitting a weak point. Even though realistically, yep, there we go. Engine block. See, as you can see, the adjustments to the normalization on AP rounds in the 8.6 patch has really made sloped armor and just armor in general a lot more effective. I don't entirely agree with what they've done with it. I think sloped armor was already effective enough. I think that generally flat armor needed a bit of a buff compared to sloped armor, but you know, as a Hetzer driver, I'm not really complaining. It's always good to enjoy one of your favorite tanks in the game, especially once it's been given a new lease on life, more resistance and greater accuracy as a tank destroyer.